2007 beyond what was actually reported out by the budget chairman in the past few weeks. Working on that today, seeing exactly what happens and transpires with the weather tomorrow, and we'll have an announcement whether or not we'll be here tomorrow or not. And then Thursday, wrapping up everything in regards to the budget and then passing it out of committee. If we do not happen to pass the budget out and during our allotted time on Thursday, we will be coming back because we will be wrapping it up on Thursday, one point or another. So just to keep that in mind. For those of you that are new to the Appropriations Committee, I've had a lot of questions in regards to how this process works, and I apologize, but the best definition that I can give you is completely random. Those of you that have sat on the Appropriations Committee know that when we open up the budget for discussion, we don't go by agency, we just go by those that want to add an amendment or have a discussion on a particular topic. So we'll be jumping around from agency to department quite frequently. So I guess in a way, brace yourself. So to get the discussion started, I'm going to turn it over to Dylan, who is going to give us a briefing on House Bill 2007 and some updates in regards to what has transpired during the committee process. Dylan.
Thank you for that introduction, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, everyone's been really busy for the past month or so, putting together their various positions. And if you were to listen to me read every single adjustment, we would be here all day. So I'm going to try to hit the high points. I'm going to be working from this sort of cream-colored document right here, which is the House shorthand. What this document details is all of the adjustments that have been made in budget committees and adopted by the appropriations committees so far. And so I'm going to try to go through it, hit the high points. I do have my fiscal team available, and I would appreciate the opportunity to step aside when someone more expert than I is available to answer questions on a specific area. So if we could start on page 1. If we look at the Attorney General, there's a $350,000 ad for the Memorial Hall relocation, a $343,000 ad for the CISO in an IT support position, and $305,000 added to the Office of Medicaid Inspector General, and about $250,000 SGF added for victim identification and notification system funding due to a drop in federal funding available for that program. Turning to page 2, I'm going to go ahead and pass over page 2. This is mostly just some fee board adjustments. Turning to page 3, the only thing I want to touch on here is in the middle of the page, under Board of Indigent Defense Services, there's the add of $4 million from previously lapsed reappropriations, largely related to their assigned counsel caseloads. Turning to page 4. If you want me to slow down, just let me know. I'll slow down. We start with the Department of Administration. So we have the addition of $7 million to restore the reappropriation for the centralized licensing verification portal. That was a legislative initiative to centralize regulatory licensing in the state. There's $520,000 added to DOB reappropriation. There's $500,000 added to restore reappropriation for the Jewish Centers of Faith security measures. There's $400,000 of SGF added to establish a mail scanning structure. There's $400,000 added to a reappropriation of the Office of Public Advocate Operations. This is the first step in moving that money over to the new agency for the Office of the Child Advocate. And there was a deletion of $19.3 million of ARPA for the Docking State Office building. In FY 2026, there's the addition of $26 million SGF for the ERP modernization program. That's a cloud-based infrastructure that would replace our existing accounting systems and personnel systems in the state.
Continue.
All right. Department of Commerce. FY 2025, we have the addition of $5.8 million SGF for the Bombardier Defense Project. Moving to page 5. FY 2026, we have the addition of $2.5 million SGF for Level Up Kansas. The addition of $1 million SGF for the KC Bio Hub. And I highlighted this for some reason, but there's the addition of 73,000 SGF to continue preparations for the semi-quincentennial and one FTE position associated with that. There is, on item 6, under the Office of Broadband Development, the addition of $1 million, all from federal funds. That's out of the BEAD program for the broadband program. And $625,000 EDI for Build Up Kansas, $500,000 EDI for Kit Kerr. Under 11, there's the deletion of $1 million FGF from, or EDIF, excuse me, from the operating grant, and add language requiring the agency to provide a report to the State Finance Council to release funds when the report is made available. Turning to page 6. There's the transfer of $1 million SGF to the Department of Commerce for a drone certification. So these will show up as revenue adjustments in the profile. So things like this, anytime you see a transfer of SGF, that's really just still SGF spending. It just appears as special revenue fund spending, and you have a corresponding revenue reduction on the profile. Once again, moving on page 6. I'll talk about in the middle of the page, underneath the judiciary, you see the specialty courts funding, and that's in item 2 under 2026. And this is the add of $1 million SGF from the Specialty Court Resources Fund. But again, once again, this is just effectively SGF spending because you have a transfer of $1.5 million SGF to the Specialty Court Resources Fund. So it has a revenue reduction effect like I just discussed. Turning to page 7, I am going at the very bottom of page 7. You have a $2.0 million add to the OITS agency for an agency IT emergency fund. Turning to page 8. In the Office of the Governor in 26, you have the add of $1 million SGF for domestic violence prevention and the deletion of $2.3 million SGF for child advocacy centers. Underneath the state treasurer in the middle of the page, you have an add of $2 million SGF for the Pregnancy Compassion Awareness Program. Under KDADS, in item 1 at the bottom of page 8, you have an add of $45.1 million SGF to restore lapsed reappropriations in an HCBS program. There is information from the federal government that a failure to restore these programs would result in the loss of that funding via a clawback action. Turning to page 9, under KDADS, you have a $29.3 million add for nursing facility rate add-ons, taking it to $20 per day. You have a $13.6 million add to IDD waiver slots to add 500 individuals. You have a $6 million add for community mental health centers. You have a $4.8 million SGF add for nursing facility rate rebase. You have a $2.5 million add for the brain injury waiver, taking it from $18.99 to $25 per hour. You have a $2 million add to the behavioral health training program related to psychiatry fellowships, nursing programs, and educational pathways. There's a $1.8 million add for the SUD, or substance abuse disorder, workforce development. There's a $1.7 million add for specialized medical care. There's a $1.5 million add for behavioral health add-on, and that takes the payment to $175 add-on payment. And the last one I'll touch on this page is $1 million added to a nutrition services program for senior funding, and it's to combat a cut and reduction of federal funding for that program. Turning to page 10. I'll just touch on item 17 here, and that is telehealth services. It is an add of $2 million SGF and a delete of $2 million SGF, moving money from the MHIT program to telehealth services. I think this was discussed at length already. Under DCF, all right, you have an add of $1.8 million SGF to administer the summer EBT program and $1 million to adopt the human services caseloads. This was an error on our part. When we were marking up the bill, we just excessively lapsed about $1 million in reappropriations that were for human services caseloads. On page 11, I'm just going to pass right over this. It doesn't mean it's not important. It's just interest of time. Turn to page 12. We have an add of $9 million SGF to a special FMAP account for previously lapsed reappropriations. That we already kind of talked about that. Under FY26, item 1, you have a $16.9 million add of SGF to increase the Medicaid dental rates, and a $10 million add for hospitals providing inpatient behavioral health services in 26, and language directing which hospitals those go to. You have $1 million SGF for healthcare upskilling training program. You have $1 million SGF to increase the Medicaid reimbursement for pediatric visits. And I will pass over the remaining items on that list. Turn to page 13. I did want to touch on a novel item towards the bottom. There's an $8.7 million transfer from the HCAP program, that's Healthcare Access Improvement Program. And that's just interest in that account. It sort of just takes the interest from that account and puts it in the state general fund. So that's a positive revenue adjustment to the tune of $8.7 million. Historically, the HCAP program has been able to retain its interest. So looking at Larned State Hospital at the bottom, you have a $30 million ad for contract nursing and an $830,000 ad for the sex pred program. Turning to page 14, under education. So there's a $17.5 million ad for the two-year colleges student success initiatives, $14.3 million ad for the two-year college apprenticeship account. Turning to page 15. You have a $10.5 million ad to the Tech Ed operating grant, a $5 million ad for a community college capital outlay, a $4 million ad for tiered Tech Ed, a $3.9 million ad for tuition technical education, a $3.3 million ad to the Washburn operating grant, and a $2.2 million ad for the Kansas Osteopathic Scholarship. I will note in item 10, there is a deletion of $32.7 million from the Kansas Campus Restoration account. This is a statutory transfer used to do demolition and rehab and repair of buildings. At the very bottom of the page of 15, you have a $30 million ad for special education in FY 2026. And you'll see, if you turn to page 16, there's another $30 million ad for FY 2027. Turning to page 17, under Emporia State University, you have a $2.2 million SGF ad for legal expenses related to program reductions. And for the Historical Society, you have a $905,000 ad for interior wall infrastructure. Under the ESART program, this is the sort of ESART vet med piece. You have $4 million EDIF for the KSU 105 and $3.5 million SGF for KSU vet med. Turning to page 18. The only item I wanted to touch on page 18 is under the KU Med Center. And there's a $4.3 million ad of SGF to create the Specialty Medical Student Loan Program, which is a combination of some other previous grants that were in there, sort of a consolidation. Turning to page 19, at the top you have the MyChart language. Under Wichita State University in the middle, you have a $5 million ad for aviation research. And you have a $750,000 ad for the School of Dentistry to do a study about a possible School of Dentistry. Under the Adjutant General, you have two ads, both of which are related to disaster relief spending. Yes. So $1.5 million in 25 and $2.3 million in 26. Turning to page 20. Under Department of Corrections, you have a $28.2 million ad for the Evidence-Based Juvenile Programs Fund. Most people in here should be aware and familiar with this program at this point. That is not a full add back of the previous lapse, it's a partial restoration. And there's $10 million SGF added for the Lansing Correctional Facility Career Campus, and $5.4 million SGF to fully fund the medical services contract. It's $5.4 to fully fund in 25, and $8.3 to fully fund in 26. There's $4 million added to fund deferred rehab and repair at corrections, and $1.7 million added in 26 to fully fund the food service contract. Turning to page 21, I'm going to go ahead and pass over all items on this page. Turning to page 22, towards the middle of the page, you have $1.1 million SGF added to the Sentencing Commission for SB 123 programs. That's drug treatment programs and rehabilitation. On the state 911 board, you have the $2 million SGF added to administer these GIS grants for schools. On 23, I'm going to pass over everything on this page. On 24, you have the Kansas State Fair adds $750,000 SGF for the Emergency Command Center. And on page 25, the final page, and thank you for your patience, the net effect of all these items together in the box is it adds $165.2 million or $160.8 million off funds in 25. And in 26, it adds $258.1 million or $400 million all funds to FY26. And that's to that the 2007 as it was introduced. Okay, so that's with the LBC having made all the cuts first, and then this is what's being added back to that base, is what the total add is. You do have a profile in front of you that looks like this. So I was incorrect. I thought at first it was going to be negative revenue adjustments. Overall, it's positive revenue adjustments. So if you look in line 7, under House Appropriations revenue adjustments, you add $32.9 million to appropriations, and that's some of those positive transfers from like the HCAP program, okay, and also from the deletion of the Campus Restoration Act, offset by some revenue reductions. It all nets out positively to add about $32 million in 26. And if you look below on lines 17 and 18, so 2007 deleted $290.4 million from the agency request in 25 and $1.1 billion from the agency request in 26. And then you add back $165 million in 25. That leaves you in line 19, $10.8 billion in expenditures. And if you look at FY 2026, you're adding back $258.1 million. That leaves you with about $10.6 billion. So if you look in line 22 in ending balances, you're looking at an ending balance of $2.1 billion and then $1.4 billion in FY25 and FY26. Respectively, I would note that at this point, this profile does not incorporate the effects of any possible tax legislation that may be passed, because everything's still kind of up in the air at this point. But it's something to keep in the back of your mind, because if any tax legislation does pass, it would certainly impact the numbers you see on this table. This does, anyway, I'll leave it kind of there and stand for questions and see what I can do.
All right. Thank you, Dylan. Now we'll open up for questions. Representative Helgerson.
Thank you very much. The computer program multi-year appropriation, $26 million in fiscal, but it doesn't look like that the contract is going to be let until much later. Is that correct?
So it's $26 million in FY26. So I have not heard that they are not planning on letting the program sometime next year. If it were in the current fiscal year, I could see, but it's at FY26. So they'll have, 18 months from now to sign that contract.
So it wouldn't qualify for ARPA?
So it is not, for any current ARPA funds, they had to be obligated by last December.
Interest. I'm sorry.
ARPA interest, there's a lot of outstanding questions about what ARPA interest can be used for. In my opinion, and I would also rely on Joe Walters from the Revisor's Office, it's not clear that we have any clear restrictions on how those funds can be used.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Dylan. I have a concern that our tax cuts last year were retroactive to January 1st, and every company collected taxes from every Kansan that worked under the old taxes, and so every single Kansas that paid taxes this year or last year will get a refund. Is that baked into this?
Mr. Chairman. Yes, it is. So there was an acceleration factor that was put into this tax season to increase the amount of revenue reduction that you're seeing based upon an anticipated effect from that specifically.
Representative Tarwater.
So is that why the number is so large this year, because the refunds are coming? the negative number?
It is. That's why you go 10.1 and 9.7. If you're looking at line 4, and then you go to 9.8, so you have that sort of limited growth, and then you sort of restore the sort of growth pattern. You have a greater effect of those tax reductions in the current fiscal year.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And will we know the true effect of this year? I mean, I guess revenue estimates don't come in until after we adjourn. So are we going to have any idea before we adjourn on where we're going to be sitting?
It's going to be tight. We've been trying to arrange the revenue estimates and the times for we're doing those to allow you to give you at least some notification of what those numbers are going to be. And of course, who knows how April and May and June are going to go as far as the legislative process is concerned. We, of course, do produce monthly receipts, memos that we make available to you. So you can see we're about $80 million up right now. Withholding is looking really strong in the state of Kansas, and retail sales kind of bounced back after a little bit of a weak December. And so far, we look good, but of course, you are 100% correct. That's those final tax payments that we'll receive over the next couple of months that are really the determining factor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions for Dylan in regards to the budget bill? Representative Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dylan, do you have any information regarding the state general fund profile as it relates to how much in obligations we'll have towards the Panasonic or Apex, through the Apex legislation to Panasonic, and any information on that? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, why don't I give it to Representative Howe on the side? It's in the back end of this profile, actually. We build in all of the Apex effects are actually built into this profile in the 5 years already. If you want the exact numbers of those effects, I'll probably have to look at a different tab on my spreadsheet.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I'm going to piggyback on that question. In commerce, we've been talking about economic development incentives and potentially repealing one of those impacts that in 10 years, it's going to have a $250 million impact. Is that embedded in this as well?
Dylan.
So I would probably needed some additional details about which program we're talking about in order to make those determinations. We do carry forward the effects of any existing incentives are built into the base. Just because of the way we do our estimates, it's built into the estimate.
And I would agree with you because you had a discussion in regards to those tax credits. You're going off existing law, not proposed.
That is correct.
Any further questions for Dylan? All right. Seeing none. Thank you. I need to actually circle back up to the first item on the agenda. I was getting a little ahead of myself and getting right into the budget discussion. So first, are there any bill introductions this morning? Representative Getz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an act concerning State Board of Education increasing compensation for members of the board, and it is 25 RS 0922. That's 25 RS 0922.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a second? Second by Representative Turk. All those in favor of the bill introduction say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bill is introduced. Representative Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is RS 0271 on behalf of Senator Titus, an act concerning child care relating to the Department of Administration and the Children's Cabinet.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a second? Second by Representative Getz. All those in favor of the bill introduction say aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes on a very weak aye. Any further bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none, thank you for letting me go back to that item. So now we are going to begin work on House Bill 2007. So I'd entertain a motion to enter discussion. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the point of discussion, I move that we pass out House Bill 2007 favorably for passage.
All right, is there a second? Second by Representative Hoffman. Any discussion on the motion? All right, so I'm going to have a series of motions. Going back to, I believe it was the state treasurer, in regards to, and Representative Wassinger, I may have to refer to you on some of these items. In discussion that we've had in committee, and then also with the outside individuals, and then also with leadership, there is some concern about draining that entire fund that is called the Kansas Housing Linked Deposit Loan Program. And so I know there was $20 million for, or actually a total of $40 million for revolving loan programs within that ask. And we would like just to make sure that, one, we already have a revolving loan program for housing and with the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. And actually, I'm having a meeting with them in the governor's office this afternoon. So I think we shouldn't set up another loan revolving program. We already have one established. And also, this is an outside agency that would be taking state dollars and trying to administer those, which I have concerns about that. So it would be taking the $40 million out for a revolving loan program. The only items that we would fund out of this fund would be the housing projects throughout the state, because it was a statewide initiative in regards to this. So there were many communities that had housing asks in that. But to specifically make sure that it is for, and it does say there that it's for infrastructure. So it's not actually we're building houses, we're helping the communities get the infrastructure to get a contractor to build the homes. So I just want to make that poignantly clear. And I would probably defer to Representative Wassinger. Do you have that information on what that dollar figure would be just for the housing projects? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I left that back in my office, but the bottom part, it was 62 million in total. So I would say that would be 22 million with your saying the 40,000 in the revolving loans.
Okay. So yeah, I just want to take the revolving loan programs out, but leave the housing projects and the infrastructure for those housing projects in, before we have that throughout the state of Kansas, so we can work with research on that finalized number. So approximately $22 million is what we'd be looking at, but we'll get the final number. So that'd be my motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Williams. Any discussion on the motion? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the Innovation Center is very valuable to rural Kansas. And so I think that their intention is to really concentrate on the rural areas of Kansas. So I'm disappointed that that would be taken out. I know that they would be willing to provide total transparency on what they're spending and what they're doing. So I would prefer that we give them the 62 million to work with, since it's just been sitting there, and this could put it into action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I respect that, and I mean, I've worked with the Innovation Center for many years, and I do have the respect for them. We gave out of their request last year with the Dane G. Hansen Foundation in regards to housing, $4 million last year, that they are working in cooperation with that foundation for housing in rural Kansas. What I have concern about is a revolving loan, where we already have an established revolving loan program within a quasi-state entity. And we were talking about duplication of services. This, to me, is another duplication of services. And even though I would think they would have the resources and come back to the state and tell us what they're doing, it's still an outside state agency and administering state dollars to the tune of $40 million. And that's a pretty heavy lift when we don't even have a balance nearly that high with the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. So that's why I have pause on the revolving loan program. Any further discussion? Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want clarification. You're taking out 40 million and leaving 22.
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Wassinger.
Charday did show me that it was, the total was at 59, almost 60 million. So it's not quite 22 million, but I'm sure they can use it, and they would provide the transparency to know that they used it well. Thank
I
you,
think
Mr.
by
Chair.
the language of the motion, I think research and the revisers can constrict that dollar amount to what exactly the intention of the motion is. Any further discussion? Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to figure out the program that you're talking about. Is this the program we put into place a few years ago because for gap financing between what the bank?
No, this is a completely new program that was brought up when the State Treasurer's Office budget was reported out by the General Government Budget Committee. So not an existing program. This is a new ask.
Okay, all right. So was there any thought given to using this program in lieu of the KHRC program?
No.
Okay. The KHRC gives out a lot of money, and a lot of times it's the same stacking. They stack things. So.
Well, and that's what gives me concern about having another revolving loan program out there when they are giving out grants as well.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I close my motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Okay, so the next item that I have, and I actually brought this up with many of those that have come to my office, in particular this item that we had on Friday in regards to KDADs, and it'd be item number 2 for 2026. This, on page 9, this was actually an item that we discussed last year, and believe me, I would love nothing more than to put more money towards the waiting list and get individuals off the waiting list. Those of you that I've spoke to about this, I have a nephew who was on the waiting list, and now he is receiving services. So I have some personal experience with this, and actually my sister-in-law during Christmas was talking to me about this particular item, which gave me concern when we removed 500 individuals from the wait list on the IDD waiver in fiscal year 25, and there was a motion, an amendment on the House floor last year to add an additional 500, and we were expressed by the department that they did not have the workforce capacity to do that. I seriously doubt that within 9 months after passing that bill, the capacity is there. And after the discussion that I had with my sister-in-law at Christmas, I know that the capacity is not there because the caregiver that they have for their son is extremely strained and cannot actually provide all the services that they need for their son because she has so many other individuals in her territory that she is trying to help as well. So I respect the Social Services Budget Committee in wanting to go 500. I still have concern that that is feasible. I think we still have a workforce capacity so we can throw the money out there, but unless the workforce is out there to actually get these individuals off the wait list, it will do absolutely nothing. So I'm going to make a motion that we bring that from 500 to 250 individuals from the wait list, which would make that cost approximately $6.8 million SGF, so we can work towards getting individuals off the wait list, but also adhering to the fact that we need to have the workforce capacity in order to do so. So that is my motion, seconded by Representative Williams. Discussion on the motion. Representative Turk, then Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I remember in last year's conversations involving the waiver slots that we were tied by federal requirements, and if we exceeded certain numbers that we would lose federal funding. Is that still a concern? Because that was what was one of the factors that prevented us from putting more money in this last year. I just don't want to exceed their regulations and then impact this whole area of the budget, if that makes sense. Would anybody remind me of what the federal statute was that we were concerned about last year when we were debating this?
I would need to probably defer to either Chairman Bueller or for or Representative Carpenter. Representative Carpenter, since you're next up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not aware of what the representative is talking about there. I do think that we've made significant progress in the wait list over the last year. We put the cap on at 4,800 last year. We're at 4,300 now. In the committee, we also put a cap this year of 4,000. And I think that we just need to, and I understand your concern about the capacity. I certainly do. But with that, I would make a substitute motion that we bring it down to 320. And that would be 70 more than you're proposing, and it would cost about $2 million more, but that would be my motion. I think that we need to continue on. This legislature has taken great steps to reduce the wait list, and I'm afraid that if we don't continue, we will lose that momentum. So that would be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, committee, you've heard the substitute motion, seconded by Representative Hoffman. Discussion on the substitute motion. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not disagreeing with any of this. I just wondered, we have this large wait list, and I'm told that a lot of parents anticipate needing help with their children in years later. Because of the wait list, we have a lot of people who aren't really ready for services yet. So is there some way to figure out how that wait list is broken up? I just would.
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for the question. It is a little bit confusing because in the past, our wait list, the length of time was 11 years, and now it's down to roughly 8. So we've brought that wait list, but when people knew that it was going to be 11 years and they had a 5-year-old child, they would sign up on the wait list because that would still give them services at 15. So we have reduced that down. It's incredibly difficult. KU spent a year studying the wait list. We have that back. It was good, but it was really inconclusive about that. In the survey that they did, we had around 30% of the folks responded to that survey, which is absolutely amazing to me that, when these folks are being affected by, this policy and their child on the wait list, that 70% of them wouldn't return the survey. It's amazing. But according to them, that's a good sampling of folks. And so I understand your concern. There are some people on the wait list, I'm sure, that are not ready for services right now. And potentially, you could say any number. It could be half. I don't know what that number is. I do know that we're committed to reducing the wait list, and then with that, and there's a little bit of funding here to start the community support waiver, which I think will further reduce the wait list because it requires only 7 services versus the 14 that we require in the big waiver, and we've capped that at $20,000 a year for those folks. So it's not exact science, I guess, is what I'm saying at this point in time. I wish I could give you better answers, but when you only have 30% of the folks answering a survey to do that, it's very difficult to find out who needs services and who doesn't.
Representative Walsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, and I agree. It's a very poor showing of surveys from people, but I wonder if some people are worried that their child will be taken off if they say, they're not needing it right now. Is there a way to find out how many people are getting services? I would think they'd have a number of people who get services, not necessarily a list of the names, but people who get services, and maybe when you see the wait list, we can guesstimate?
Well, right now we have a little over 9,000 folks on the ID and DD waiver. So if that Is that what you're,
How many of those 9,000 people are getting services now?
those people
That's
are
the
being
people
served.
that are getting services.
are
So
being
how many are
served.
left then, approximately?
4,320.
Okay.
And that's kind of the thinking
43,
about
21?
bringing it down to the 4,000 cap, 320 folks off the wait list. I think capacity is there to serve those folks. I fought it last year because there was a lot of pressure to do 1,000, and I agreed with the chairman. That was too many. But I do think we can do 320 and still continue to make a dent in it and have the services needed for those folks.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am a strong supporter of the substitute motion. I would just say it's an incredibly complex issue. I appreciate Representative Wassinger's comments about the need for fidelity, but the fact is, of the 4,300 people that are left, they all have unique circumstances and needs and requirements. I have constituents in my district, had a daughter who was on the waiting list for 10 and a half years, from June of 2013 to December of, to December of 2023. In my short time with this, I know two things. We have to put, if we have the goal in mind of getting the IDD wait list to zero, we have to commit dollars for the providers that are out there, and we have to put a cap on the wait list. So I think we're doing those two things. I do think it's, although I would have preferred the 500, I do think 320 gets us down to that 4,000 level, and I'd urge your support for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last year, Representative Carpenter's on this motion. Last year, we added 500 and the governor requested 250. Is that correct?
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. What the governor recommends and what I recommend are not usually the same.
That is correct. I think that is correct, that she recommended 250 and then we did additional 250 in committee. Vice Chair Williams.
Okay. Representative Tarwater corrected me. I believe the governor's original budget didn't have any increases, and then her GBA was adding 250, and then the legislature came in and gave 500. So this year, I know you kind of answered it already, but did the governor recommend any increases in the IDD?
She did not.
Okay, so she did not. So committee, just so we're all very, very aware, this legislature has added $400 million in additional Medicaid enhancements in the past 5 years. We've taken the most vulnerable very, very seriously and have actually put more dollars to the most vulnerable than our governor. So thank you for all your work.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you. I would be in support of this as well. And the only thing I can add additional to that is that the fact that we did the 500 last year, there were a lot of people who came to testify to say that they were happy that that list was coming down. And they felt hopeful that maybe their children wouldn't, or whoever was on it wouldn't die on the list, that they would get the support services. I have done this for years, and I have seen it go from a smaller list to a larger list, and the hopelessness that people came before us with. And they were a lot more hopeful about it. They still don't think it's quick enough, but that's why I think the 320 would be in between, because there are people that have still been on that list a long time, and this would give them more hope that the list is moving. And what they said, they weren't sure that the legislature really cared about their problems and how long they had to wait. And they feel more hopeful at this point. And I think that would be the right way to go. I know we have to reduce the amount of money we're spending, but I hope we don't do it in this area because they have been on that list a long time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify, this motion only applies to the SGF, so it'd be around 8.8 million, but the all other funds is the same?
No, it'd be, I believe it's a reduction in the all funds as well, but I'd have Representative Carpenter explain.
Okay.
Since he
Yeah,
made
it
the
would be a-
substitute motion.
It would be the same reduction as the federal funds at 60/40 roughly. Dayton, do you have that number? I didn't figure that. I usually just deal with SGF, but it would be about a $5 million savings from the 500 that we have on there. It's 8.7 million is the SGF portion, and that would probably be in the neighborhood of, let's see, 35 million. So probably 25 million, thereabouts of federal funds.
Representative Hoy.
Thank you.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this question really goes to the maker of the substitute motion. I understand the thought behind reducing it to 250 because of workforce lack of availability. Increasing it to 320, do you feel confident, or has there been any discussion as to whether or not we'll be able to actually provide those services to the additional folks? I know 70 isn't a huge difference, but
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you for that. You know, last year we proposed the 500, and there ended up being 800 taken off the wait list. KDADS took 250 or so on their own also. So I am confident that we can provide those services for those folks.
Representative Sutton.
thank you. That was the question. Thank you.
Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. The federal funds, do we leave money laying on the table by not going ahead and going to the 500 level?
Representative Carpenter.
Well, not necessarily. It's a capacity issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a capacity issue, and I understand the chairman's concern about that. So it's 60-40 split. So if you look at that, you know, it's going, no matter what you put in there for SGF, it's going to be 460, you know, for all funds. So no, I don't believe we leave any money on the table whatsoever of federal funds.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since everybody was real concerned about my question earlier, I went and found out the answer for you, and I can answer yours. The amount we put in is directly proportional to the amount that they send back after they revise whom we serve throughout the year. So they're related, but we don't leave anything on the table. It's about how productive we are on our end.
Any further discussion? Representative Estes.
This is a question perhaps for, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for Representative Carpenter. I'm a little confused about the messages I'm hearing, because I think in my mind I always assumed that the slot wouldn't be filled unless there was the manpower, but then I'm also hearing, well, there's kind of some stretching going on. How judicious do you think they are about adding people? Like, we may fund a certain amount of slots, but as they're identifying workers to fill the slots, what's your sense on how spread they are? I mean, because like, it just seems inappropriate to say, hey, we've added you a slot, but we're kind of spread thin, so we're gonna help you, but maybe not like we wish we could.
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you for that question. And I believe the last thing that we want to do is have that person be offered services and not be able to take care of them. And I think that KDADS has been very judicious in that. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. It's not like today we're going to do 320. It's a rollout to, I think Wichita, for instance, ComCare was 270 or something last year. You know what I mean? It's not just, it takes a lot of time to offer those services and then find placement for those services. So it's not like we're going to flood the market. It will probably take an entire year for the final people to be offered the services off the wait list.
Representative Estes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the substitute motion? All right, seeing none, Representative Carpenter, you may close.
I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the substitute motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. The next item that I have, and actually thought this was going to be added, but I guess it's not. In the discussion that we had with Larned State Hospital in regards to the motion that was made by Representative Tarwater in regards to contract nursing. And the only thing that I would add on that is I had mentioned that I would like the LCC to set up an interim committee to discuss contract nursing at Larned State Hospital. And obviously I would like to request 4 days, but I'm not going to put that in the motion. I'll have the LCC devise how many days they would like for that particular committee. But it's not only discussing contract nursing, but also nursing pay at Larned State Hospital, and also housing with Pawnee County and the city of Larned. So that's the only motion that I have in regards to that. It's not changing any dollar amounts, just adding that an interim committee be set up so we can have a discussion in regards to that particular item. Seconded by Representative Tarwater. It's technically on page 13 at the bottom of the page, item number 1. And then on 2027 on page 14, it's item number 1, and that was the motion made by Representative Tarwater in regards to no money being expended for contract nursing in fiscal year 2027. Discussion on the motion. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, you were talking about a global look at contract nursing, not just exclusively at Larned?
Yeah, we could go have a global. I'll modify the motion. We specifically had a discussion about not having the contract nursing paid in fiscal year 2027 for Larned, not necessarily Osawatomie or any other state hospitals, but we can have that be a global discussion in contract nursing in general, if that's fine with the second. No, and it's fine with the second. So we'll make that change. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll close on my motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. I'm going to hold off on some of the other motions that I have, gather my language, so I'll open it up for other discussion. Representative Wassinger, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a couple of motions. The first one is I move that we give $1.1 million from SGF that would restore the security and IT-related enhancement budgets requests for FY26, and to move the cybersecurity and general IT posture, and to move the cybersecurity and general IT posture of the judicial branch forward. The enhancements include funding to implement the provisions of 2024's SB 291 cybersecurity bill, and that was missed. All of that was required by the bill.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Francis. Discussion on the motion. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so is this listed on a page, or where can we find judiciary to expedite this request?
I'm going to say if it was omitted, it's probably not going to be showing up on, but what page is the, 6, page 6.
Page 6. She didn't give me my. Thank you. Hi. We took that out, but so we need to add the 1.1 million for cybersecurity stuff that we took out.
Representative Wassinger.
We omitted the 1.1 million. There were a lot of, there was a list of things that they had added, and when I talked to them about it, they came back with the list showing what was required by SB 291. So that's where the 1.1 million came in. I don't have it in front of me. I don't have the budget summary. Wait a minute. No. But I can get that for you.
Any further discussion in regards to the motion? Representative Hoffman and Curtis. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I remember rightly, the SB 291 required a CISO for everybody. But I think that was the only requirement as far as them hiring IT. So is this hiring a CISO plus other IT people?
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They already have their CISO. This is to help implement all the other things that the bill asks them to do, to add to cybersecurity.
Representative Hoffman.
Yeah, like what?
Representative Wassinger.
Okay. Hang on just a second. Damn it. Something else.
291, I don't have this written down for you.
Okay.
But it has the NIST standards, and that, for compliance for that, is the .gov piece, but I think they've got the funding for that already in the bill. It'll have that study for getting all of the county court systems onto the judicial one, like centralized. That would be the main thing I would suspect on that. I can't, that's generally, that's what the requirement is in 291, but I don't know for the
Mr. Wassinger.
I had a really bad mishap and lost a folder when I was home this weekend, and it was frightening. But what I believe the money is mostly for is to do the study to get all the municipal courts underneath them and, you know, sort of shore up the holes out there as well and get them, their IT underneath the executive branch IT.
Representative Hoffman.
Okay, I don't know. I'd like to have some more information about it before. I understand the CISA. I mean, that was in the bill that we need to do that. I guess personally, I'd like to have some more information about it before we add this.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Representative Hoffman. He covered the same questions I had.
Any further discussion in regards to the motion? All right, seeing none, Representative Wassinger, you may close.
Okay, I'm really let the judicial branch down by not having that paper in front of me, so I apologize. I can bring it back later. So I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed? No. The noes appear to have it. Noes do have it. Motion fails. One thing I did forget to mention at the beginning of the meeting as well, and actually you can thank my wife because she was the one that went out and bought about $75 worth of pastries and donuts for me using my debit card. She didn't use her funds. But that was for my phone malfunction from last week. So if you get hungry, you can have the donuts and breakfast back there. Representative Wassinger, I believe you still had the floor.
Yes. Now that I've moved everything around. In the office of the governor, and that is on
And if you could reference the page number that you're on.
Yes, I'm trying to. That's why I'm trying to get to that. 8. It's on page 8 of the Child Advocacy Center grants. It said to delete 2.3 million from the Advocacy Center grants for 2026. That was misspoken. In 2024, they had approximately I want to say God bless America. I had it all in front of me. They had about 4.6 million allotted to them, and they asked for 6.1 million. And accidentally, it came out with deleting that 2.3 million. So I'd like to move that the governor's budget for the CAC grants go into the intended amount of 6.1 million, which was mistaken by me when I reported out.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Sutton. Discussion on the motion. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so it's our understanding that in this fund for 2025, there was 4 million. Is that correct?
Representative Wassinger.
Yes.
Representative Williams.
And so you're wanting to take it up to 6 million, 6.3 million?
Representative Wassinger.
The amount would go up to 6.1 million.
Representative Williams.
Okay, and again, the concern is that we just saw the profile and we're $700 million underwater. I would love everyone to hold the line because every million, everything that we add is just making it more difficult for us to stay above water later. So it's not that it's not a worthy, but I would like to keep it flat. So that was just my comments on adding back. At this point, I was hoping we would just do more cuts than additions. Thank you.
Representative Sutton.
In a tough spot here, I definitely see the need for the increased funding. I also understand, I'm looking at the budget run myself, even though you know that 2029 is a fictitious number. Every out year is fictitious. It changes every year. But due to that concern, I would make a substitute motion to do exactly, now, what we did in committee was not keep it flat. That was a cut. What I'd like to do would be to keep it flat and thereby adjust the spending to 4.6 million rather than the 6.2, I think, that was in the original motion.
All right, is there a second? Seconded by Representative Hoffman. Discussion on the substitute motion. Easy peasy. You may close. Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Overruled.
You know, we had a lot of discussion about this in General Government Budget Committee, and I think that we all did a pretty good job of, you know, learning as much about this as we possibly could, and I think that there was a real point. I appreciate the comments that the Vice Chair has made, but this is one place that I think that it was really important, a place that we could see where monies could be spent, and be spent very wisely. So I think that we ought to be at the level that my chairman brought up. So I just bring it up now. Thank you.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we keep it level with where it was last year, are there additional programs that are being offered? I mean, just maybe explain to us neophytes the increase and who is not going to be served if we don't do the 6 mil.
Representative Sutton.
I think I would probably defer to the General Government Budget Chair for that one. I think she's heard the most updated information.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They just, you know, between inflation and everything else, they need to be able to serve the children that they're serving now. And I don't have the number of who they help. And I will, in full disclosure, it was actually 300,000 less than that 4.6 amount that we mentioned, but correct? Or 4.3. It was more like 4.3.
Representative Rogers.
Okay, that I mean, I appreciate the answer, but we could say that about everything. I mean, everything is going up because inflation is up. So, I mean, again, I'm just trying to see if there's specific programs, if there's specific children that won't be served, you know, why one thought we needed this enhancement beyond what with laying level. I'm just, you know, again, I think we all agree. I'm just trying to figure out, as we go through this process, we're going to have to pick winners and losers. There's just no way about it. And so what, you know, is there a different program coming down that we need to draw some federal money down, or what?
I'm not going to bring that up.
You know, I guess we're exactly, I mean, I can go either way. I'm just trying to figure out, is that going to put us in a bad position for not adding that additional money?
Representative Sutton.
Thank you for the question, and I would say that you're correct. It's been a few years since I chaired general government budget, but one thing I do recall was the number of children being served growing every single year. I think that if we could lose this one and pass the original motion, I'd be fully in favor of that, because more kids will be served. I mean, that's just the way we draw the line. I don't think the supply is the issue, or the demand, rather. Sorry. I don't believe the demand is the issue. It's the supply. And we get to decide that, or we have to decide that. I guess that's not a get in this particular case. So I would absolutely be in favor of the original motion. That's why I seconded it. But if we're going to be looking at out years and saying we've got to hold the line, which I also respect, then putting it at the 4.6 is, that's a second place, but I'll take it.
Representative Helgerson.
So we're going from delete 2.3 million to add 4 points, so that's a spread of 6.9. Is that right?
Representative Sutton.
I don't believe that's correct, but I would probably ask research to chime in on that one. I don't have the numbers in my head on this one. Very good. Dylan's always here with the answer. No, it's just not deleting 2.3. So it's a 2.3 spread.
It's not deleting the 2.3, so we go back to what was original.
Holding the line flat.
What do they do for 4.6 million?
Representative Sutton.
What does the agency do? What do the child advocacy centers do? Protect children. But
specifically,
Representative Helgerson. Representative Helgerson.
yes. Are they grants? Are they slots? Are they, what exactly do we get for 4.6?
Representative Sutton.
Well, I think that it would probably be a whole lot better for you to consult somebody who knows what the agency does in a lot more detail and talk to the agency, rather than talking to me, who made a motion to fund the agency.
Representative Helgerson.
Can anybody answer?
Representative Walsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are grants that go to many different child advocacy centers that help let's see. The model is effective in addressing child abuse cases by uniting law enforcement, child protective services, prosecutors, and medical professionals, victim advocates, into a collaborative and efficient system. And this goes to 4 or 5 different organizations, Sunflower Children's Collective. There are a lot of proponents that testified that do the same thing, that try to help children through the court system and through any problems that they've had like that.
Representative Helgerson.
So what we're doing is arguing about how many grants we give out to various organizations. How many grants did we give out last year?
Representative Walsinger.
That I'm not sure. Can you? I don't have that information in front of me.
Representative Helgerson.
Is it 10, 20, 50? Is it one for each county?
Representative Walsinger.
There are agencies all over the state. There's one in Hayes. There's one in, I don't have the number of what they did. They did not give me those numbers, but I do know that they are helping a lot of kids through the court systems as well as child abuse. and as well as other things. But I
Representative
don't have that
Helgerson.
number.
Well, I understand. I want to protect kids, and I want to make sure that they're not endangered. They work through the court systems and everything else. I just like some details. How many, what, where, what do we get for the extra or the less? You know, is what's needed 4 million, or is it 10 million, or is it 1 million? And are there other organizations that are doing the same thing?
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just also remind the committee that we're not the only end-all be-all to help protect children. I know in my county, we have a Sunlight, Children's Center, Advocacy Center, which millions are raised in private funds, and also local dollars go to help protect kids. So it's not this. Grants do not just come from the state. They come from local dollars. And that's the partnership we want. This substitute motion is to maintain the grant level at its current level. We don't even know what that level is. We're just saying, let's maintain our grants for this time being. And let's let the locals and in private investment step up as well, which they are, and hopefully they'll continue to.
Representative Getz. Representative Ousley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And according to information I've received, there are 18 agencies covering 93 counties. Sunflower Houses in Johnson County serves Johnson and Wyandotte County, and having served on the Children and Seniors Committee for a number of years, and now the Child Welfare Committee, I am familiar with the trauma-informed interview process that they go through with these kids. And when there's been subject of abuse, they have trauma-informed interviewers. They have the recordings within the room. They save children from repeated trauma of going through abuse. So I think that I'll support this substitute motion. I'm in agreement with the maker of the substitute motion that I would support the original motion as well. But if this is the best we can do is hold the line flat, I think it's the least we can do for these agencies and the kids that they help out. 4,400 kids served last year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on the substitute motion? Representative Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I get a clarification of the amount of the substitute motion?
Representative Sutton.
4.6 million.
Representative Howell.
Okay, so on the substitute motion, Mr. Chairman, I understood that they had a $4.2 million base, and then the General Budget Committee moved to increase that by 1.9 million specifically for those advocacy centers. So that would be 6.1, but you're proposing 4.6 for the base.
Representative Sutton.
Correct.
Representative Howell.
Okay, and just to have an understanding, that would be less money than last year or level?
Representative Sutton.
It's my understanding that that's level.
Representative Howell.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
So if from the revisor's office last year was 4.3 in the budget. The bill today has 4.3.
That's, thank you, Mr. Chair. You are correct. That's level including reappropriations.
All right. Any further discussion on the substitute motion? Representative Ballard.
You know, I would support it. I think even though I know there are other services out there that are available, and this looks like it was part of our error in many ways, but it didn't negate the fact that they need this funding. I'm aware we'll have to cut somewhere, but it seems that when we cut, we often cut in areas where children are involved, and it's not that easy to find the kind of help that you need that I think they are providing at this time. So it's less than what they really wanted, so we are contributing to not making the budget higher. But I think the need is here. And if we talk about youth, we got to get them when they're early, provide those services that we need, and I hope we would favor this and not cut this area. Maybe there are other areas we can cut, but I wish we wouldn't cut as much in the children's area.
And I think in regards to the substitute motion, it's not a cut. It's actually just maintaining what was previous spending levels in regards to the child advocacy centers. Correct, Representative Sutton?
That's my understanding as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any further discussion on the substitute motion? Seeing none, Representative Sutton, you may close.
Well, I thought I was going to get off easier than that, but it sounded like that at first. Y'all slow played me on that. That was great. I will close on the substitute motion.
All right,
Thank
committee,
Mr.
you heard the
Chair.
substitute motion. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, I'll bring your attention to page 11. Health and Environment, KDHE, Health and Environment 2026, about middle ways down the page. There's dental rates. It's add 44.3 million, including 16.9 SGF to increase the Medicaid dental rates for 2026 and add language directing the agency to compile data on provider enrollment and utilization. I support the increases in Medicaid dental rates. I think that it's very important. Dental health is very important to quality of life issues and all kinds of stuff like that. But this is a bridge too far. 16.9 million SGF bringing down $44 million to increase dental participation. And I understand that they did some of this in Missouri and it really helped, but this is just too much money. Normally I think last year we had put in $4 or $5 million, and that's my proposal this year is to cut that 16.9 million down to $4 million. That would be around $10 million all funds, and that's it.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Bueller. Discussion on the motion. Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As much as, in seeing the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here today, just going back and looking at what we've done on dental rates the last 2 years, the 2024 legislature added 4.8 million, including 1.9 in SGF. 2025 was 1.2 million, including 480,000 SGF. So this is actually, it's a step in the right direction and a step in the direction that's certainly better than last year, and helps us with the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Representative Carpenter, you may close.
I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bring your attention to page 8, bottom of the page, brain injury waiver rates, raising them to $25 an hour from $18.99. I am very cognizant of the importance of the brain injury waiver. I do think that that's an arbitrary figure, the $25 an hour, and I would propose to raise that to $20 an hour, and I do not see Megan. I was looking for the fiscal note on that. Oh, here's Megan.
And just for the reference, I believe, Representative Carpenter, you might be using an old form than the cream-colored forms that were passed out this morning, so it's actually page 9, item number 5, so if everybody can reference that.
Okay, sorry about that. This was from yesterday, and it's changed since then.
It's 1 million all funds, about 415,000 SGF.
So that would be changed to 415,000 SGF and $1 million all funds.
Okay, so you heard the motion. Is there a second in regards to the motion? Representative Bueller. So you're wanting to adjust it from what the committee did from $25 down to $20?
Correct.
Okay. And can you give the total dollar amount again, or the adjustment?
415,000 SGF and 1 million all funds.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Representative Carpenter, you may close.
I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right. The ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. Representative Carpenter? Any more?
That finishes what I had, the three that I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Sutton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of them myself here while we're playing this budget game. First off, oh wait, let me find it on the cream pages because you probably have those handy. Cream, I'm told they are. One moment, I'll be right with you. Didn't think I'd get my turn quite so quickly. All right, first off, with regard to the aging KDAD's budget, looking at item number 17, page 10. The telehealth services for students, I just moved to strike that entire thing. There hasn't been an RFP released on this. There was no real discussion that I could find on this. I can't remember the name of the company that was brought up there. I think we probably have it in. Oh wait, I have it over here. No, I don't. It still says just Telehealth. Somehow they're hiding the name of that company. But anyway, Hazel Hill, that's it. I didn't hear any real information on why we chose to hire an out-of-state telehealth company or why we wanted to fund an out-of-state telehealth company. And so I just moved to strike this 17 until we can at least see a case for it.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Wassinger. Discussion on the motion. Representative Bueller.
Yeah, the committee is free to choose whether they're going to support this or not. But again, I will go back to this is a provider of physical and mental health services. It's designed to augment our mental health treatment in the school system. It's not a replacement of the MHIT teams. So actually, it's if you recall, it's taking some unspent money and no impact on SGF. However, it does bring a new provider to augment mental health services, and the company's name is Hazel Health. So the services are not duplicative, and not sure that I have anything else to add, but that is the basis and the background for who this company is and what they're intending to provide. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, the reason that I liked this program is because the mental health pilot program is not in every school district. It's in some school districts. It is not going to get to all the rural districts. And what I preferred about this is that, yes, we were not adding to the budget, which not a great thing, but we were going to get to more potential students because of the innovative way in which they approached it. They also do not do this during the school hour, which the mental health pilot program often will do it during that time period. So it actually reduces in cost if you compare the two programs, they can probably get to more students because they get parental permission first. And then second, then they can do it's online. It's a digital counseling session. So that helps medium grade students with crises. And so for that reason, I feel like it's going to touch and impact rural areas more prominently than just only using one model. So I kind of preferred using both models to attack the situation. Thank you.
Representative Getz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to piggyback on the Vice Chair a little bit in support of this program. What's happening in a lot of mental health situations is there is a lot of emergency need, and Hazel and this group and what this would fund, they focus on the moderate situation to keep people out of. Because if we don't get any services before it's an emergency, then everything's an emergency. And they really focus on the moderate mental health risks and keep people out of the emergency. So I just wanted to make that statement. I think it's a good program. I'd support it.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just add to it that throughout the last 10 years, Hazel has demonstrated a positive impact of providing virtual health care for students, addressing both physical and mental health challenges. Nationwide, they serve over 6 million in 17 states. But the interesting thing for me is our model eliminates the barriers that's available out there in terms of traditional faced by families such as transportation, challenges, long wait times, and out-of-pocket expense. And when we talked with them, they weren't selling their product. They were telling us about what they provide. And it's a supplement to what the others were doing, but it's also effective. And I think that's what we have looked for is where's the proof? And for them, they can show proof of making a difference. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure we're listening to ourselves here. What we're talking about is issuing a no-bid contract with no RFP, no ability to compete with in-state companies that also offer telehealth services. What are we doing? This is not the way we hire a new company, folks. This is not transparent. This is bizarre. Follow the process. You want to hire telehealth? Great. All of this sounds fantastic. I have no problem reaching out to every individual school district with this. That's beautiful. Issue an RFP, see what's out there in the marketplace, see who wins the contract, and award it then. This is not the way we do business. Or it shouldn't be, anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You make an excellent point. I will make a substitute motion that the item stays, but it is made available through an RFP process.
All right, you've heard the substitute motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Hoy. Discussion on the substitute motion. Representative Sutton.
I'd just like clarification on that. We're not awarding it to any specific company. We're issuing an RFP for telehealth services in the, now I'm not sure what the $2 million would then be for. Is that to facilitate an RFP process?
Vice Chair Williams.
Yes, it would be up to $2 million, and I think that the RFP would come back and say, we can serve this number of students in rural areas, this number of school districts. Somebody else can say, well, for that $2 million or up to $2 million, I can serve this number of students in rural. This is how we're going to, this is how we're going to contact them. This is our policies. And so what we're doing is we're meeting the need. We are not raising the budget, but we're trying to interact with students in a different medium than the current practice. And so that's why I think the RFP is still a great suggestion, and it fulfills the it maintains the dollar amount, but it could potentially serve more because you're creating competition.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the sentiment 100%. The only thing I'm thinking is that we don't need to fund it if we haven't even issued an RFP yet. So I would probably, obviously I can't make a substitute, but I would probably recommend removing the $2 million transfer that we have here until we actually issue an RFP, until we actually hire someone.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this addition, wouldn't something like this normally go through the Kansas Department of Education or the state board? I mean, this seems to be like a new pilot project statewide. There doesn't seem to be any parameters or metrics in place for accountability. I'm concerned we're getting ahead of ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, if you go back to the mental health intervention team program, I mean, that was in the education bill, then it was moved into the budget bill. I mean, so no, I don't think it necessarily needs to be associated with the education budget. it probably is appropriate to be in KDADS because they would have the restrictions and parameters in place. But that's my personal opinion. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be a question someone can answer. How much is currently in the mental health intervention team program? How much is currently appropriated?
I think Jill is looking that up. 18 million.
All right, thank you. My concern too was similar to it not being put out for proposal, but I was also concerned about it taking away from other programs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for the chair. Can you go back to the process in the committee of how we got to this point? Is this the only, were you approached by Hazel Health, or how did we come to this point where it was these, I guess, because I think I want to know how we got here, and I'm kind of confused, with this whole situation. Can you go back and maybe explain how the committee, when the discussion, what went on there, please? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bueller.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not unlike any other issue that we all haven't faced in our committees. The topic came to us before session started, much like Fox Rehabilitation came to me back in October of last year. So an agency came, or an organization came and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about augmenting mental health, telehealth in Kansas. And again, when they came and talked to us, and I think Representative Ballard said this, they currently are in 17 states. They serve 6 million students. So that was the approach they came to. So we talked to them about what are you providing? Is it detracting from any other services? We talked about the process by which they can work with schools and parents to provide health. We talked about the fact that they don't bill parents, they bill insurance companies. So we talked about the services that they provide. That went on up to, I think, the first week of the session. Then they came and they presented to committee like they do in any other committee. So it's not that there was some nefarious way to bring this organization in front of the state. That's how it happened. So what we looked at was, how does this pair into the mental health intervention teams? And I carried that bill on the floor last year, so I'm very familiar with what that bill does. And I'm still very much a supporter of the mental health intervention team process. And I think this year, hopefully, instead of it being a proviso, we'll actually see a budget bill. So I think my initial take on this is a way to augment or be a force multiplier for telehealth. Now, whether or not they are the right provider or organization, as Representative Sutton picked at, is a fair question. I will fully admit that. There may be other providers out there that can do it. I'm not aware of any at this point because this is the one that we've been talking to. So very fair questions. That's how we got here. Again, I think I go back to what I said before. This is a decision for every member on this committee to vote your conscience, so to speak. But that's how we got here. And if that didn't answer the question, I'm freely will answer more.
Representative Rogers.
Sure, thank you. So in this discussion process, nobody else, and no Kansas company, no hospital, nobody came to you and said, hey, we can do this as well. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
Representative Bueller.
No, and I think a part of it, and I may have not said this strongly, it's a one-year pilot program. It's not, and so that's the way it was pitched. It was, if it doesn't work, you walk away from it. And it was, the request was for about $2 million in SGF. They also have a philanthropic match. I'm not sure exactly what that match is, but it is to prove whether or not it works in the state. So that was the concept. It was intriguing enough to say, okay, can we help mental health in our schools? And that's kind of how we got here.
Representative Rogers. Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The mental health intervention team saves lives, and this part of it is not something new. And it's something I heard testimony on my very first year of my very first term. So what we heard when we were saying, why aren't more schools trying to access this and participate, was that there aren't enough providers in their areas. So expanding the telehealth component to it, making that the pilot piece, is going to give us a really good idea if we can provide these life-saving services to kids that don't live close to licensed psychotherapists. And so I'm going to support this motion. I think it's really important to give this protection statewide. Thank you.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to say on the 2 million, and the 2 million needs to stay because we need to have a cap, I guess, to, if anything, you know, they need to know that 2 million is how much, if they're going to bid on it, this is how much they got. If we take that out, then sky's the limit, and we don't want that. So we want a reasonable pilot, so the 2 million needs to stay in.
Representative Helgerson.
Couple things that were said I want to touch on. Couldn't a school district contract with them right now?
Representative Euler.
I am unaware. I would make an assumption, but I would assume the assumption was yes, but I do not know that answer for sure.
We had a lengthy conversation in here about what's available statewide and what's available to school districts to pick and choose what they want if they wanted to add some things. This seems like an ideal opportunity, not only to partner with them if a school district wants to do it, but also with the community mental health centers, which is also charged statutorily with providing services to this population. I guess the question is, what conversations have gone on between the community mental health centers and this company and the subcommittee about how they should be coordinated?
Representative Bueller.
None that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman. Representative
Helgerson.
Well, I think it might be worthwhile to move ahead in some way. But I think that there's a series of other questions that should be asked first about, to those people that are already charged with providing the services, how are you going to do this in conjunction with the change in technology?
Representative Bueller.
There doesn't have to be a direct tie-in with the mental health intervention teams. They can still operate in parallel, if I'm understanding your question. I mean, they don't have to merge or be a part of the same thing. I think they're, I use a military term, it's a force multiplier, for lack of better terms.
Representative Helgerson.
Yes, but it would be a lot better if they coordinate the attack, if that's how we're looking at it, first, rather than going independently and trying to reach the same goal. Let's have the different parties all talk to each other first.
Representative Bueller.
I mean, I agree with that. Again, I think I wasn't trying to be flippant with the terminology. It was really because this was a pilot. From the pilot, you gain the learnings to see how they would eventually merge. So that's kind of my thought process anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the RFP process. Who puts that out? And then when they all come in, who does the evaluation and who makes the ultimate decision on what company is actually chosen?
Well, and in this case, since this is falling under KDAD's, I believe, they would be administering the RFP and then contracting out and letting those companies that offer these particular services to submit an RFP. But right now it's under KDAD, so they would be administering it. Representative Mosier.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've been having a little offline discussion up here about that, and perhaps the best option would be for the State Board of Education to issue the RFP. They know exactly how many schools are being or have the opportunity to utilize the mental health pilot program. Those that are on K-12 can probably update me, but I feel like we're in maybe 30s number of districts. I'm not sure, but it's definitely not everyone, and it definitely does not impact or is not available to some of the most rural, smallest schools. And therefore, this is not adding to the SGF, but it's actually taking a pilot program, and now we're going to take $2 million from it, and we're going to use telehealth to do something very similar. And I think it's a great exercise to see if we can get more students the help that they need. And so if that would be considered, I know we're on a substitute motion, if that would be considered acceptable, just that friendly addition to it, which basically says who does the RFP. It would be the State Board of Education, who does have access to all the mental health pilot program information.
So are you changing your motion to have this move from KDADS to the State Board of Education?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually didn't ever say who issued it, but you would be correct that it would be the correct assumption. It was under KDAD, so that would have been. But I guess I'm just specifying now instead of not specifying.
And who made the second on that? Hoy. Is that okay with the second? All right. So we have a modified substitute motion. Representative Ballard.
I think we're arguing a little bit about it because the committee was very excited about this program. I don't disagree that it shouldn't go out for bid, but we have had other organizations come before us, and we have issued a 1 year, and we haven't opened it up for everyone else to apply. The committee was very excited about it because of what it offered. The other thing is there was a former Kansas representative that was very familiar with what we do in Kansas, and she's an attorney, and she was very knowledgeable about our services. So it was an opportunity at one time to look at it, to see how it worked. We saw they were effective. They knew about Kansas. And this is not the only time that we have offered one time to people. So I am defending what the committee did because they were very enthusiastic about it. And I understand the direction you want to go, but these people were deserving, and they presented it well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Estes.
Just seems to me that it's been a while since we've had an update on MHIT since the transition made, and I kind of think it might be a little better to stay in KDADS. I feel like they know a little more about this than the overall picture than the state board might have right now, but I don't have a sense of what updates the state board has been given. And I'm also sitting here wondering, what if this pilot was used only in areas that don't have MHIT? Because I do get a little concerned about the rural areas getting the most access to this. Just a thought.
Any further discussion on the substitute motion? Seeing none, Representative Williams, you may close.
I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the substitute motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes appear to have it. Division has been called. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. All right, some abstained. Motion passes on a vote from 12 to 5. All right, we have 5 minutes. Oh, so the motion passes. We have 5 minutes until we're supposed to be on the floor. So until tomorrow, we are in recess.